In the beginning there was not sand nor sea, nor the salty waves. There was no earth, nor the heavens above. There was only a yawning void, a chasm of nothingness known as Ginnungagap. To the north of this void lay the realm of Nibelheim, a world of ice, fog, and eternal cold. To the south lay Muspelheim, a realm of fire, light, and scorching heat, guarded by the giant Surt with his flaming sword. For countless ages, these two realms existed in opposition. From Nibelheim, a great spring called Virgelmer flowed, and its icy rivers, known as the Livigar, ran into the great void. As the venomous yeast from these rivers met the warm air of Muspelheim, it began to thaw and drip. From these drops, life stirred for the first time. Two beings were formed. The first, a giant named Ymir, the ancestor of all frost giants, and the second, a cosmic cow named Audhumla. Ymir was a being of immense size and power, and from his sweat other giants were born. While he slept, a male and female grew from under his left arm, and his legs begot a son. These were the first of the cruel and chaotic frost giants. Audhumla, the great cow, nourished Ymir with her 4 rivers of milk. For her own sustenance, she licked the salty ice blocks of Ginnungagap. For 3 days she licked the ice, and slowly a new being was revealed. On the first day his hair appeared, on the second his head, and on the third day the entire being was freed. This was Buri, the first of the gods. Buri was fair and strong, and he had a son named Bor. Bor, in time, took a wife from the giants, a woman named Besla, the daughter of the giant Bolthorn. Bor and Besla had 3 sons: Odin, the oldest and wisest; Vili, who gave reason and motion; and Vi, who gave the senses and outward appearance. These 3 brothers were the first of the Aesir, the race of gods who would come to rule the cosmos. The 3 brothers looked upon the world and saw the chaos of the giants. They saw Ymir, a being of immense and untamed power, and they knew that for a structured world to exist, Ymir must be slain. A great war was waged between the brothers and the primeval giant. The battle was fierce, and the void echoed with the sounds of their struggle. But in the end, Odin and his brothers were victorious. They slew Ymir, and from his body they began to fashion the world. The blood of Ymir flowed in a great deluge, drowning all the frost giants except for one, Bergelmir, and his wife, who escaped on a wooden chest and founded a new race of giants in the land of Jotunheim. From Ymir's flesh, the brothers made the earth. His bones they piled up to create the mountains in his teeth, and shattered bones became the rocks and pebbles. His blood filled the void, becoming the oceans and rivers. They took his skull, and from it they crafted the sky, placing a dwarf at each of the 4 corners to hold it aloft. These dwarfs were named Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, representing the 4 cardinal points. From the embers and sparks that flew from Muspelheim, the brothers created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and set them in the sky to illuminate the new world. They gave the sun and moon chariots and horses to guide them on their daily journey across the heavens. The sun was named Sol, and the moon Mani. They were pursued endlessly by 2 great wolves, Skoll and Hati, who sought to devour them. With the world now formed, the brothers walked along the shore and found 2 fallen trees, an ash and an elm. From these, they created the first man and woman. Odin breathed into them the spirit of life. Vili gave them understanding and motion, and Vi gave them their senses and their form. The man they named Ask, and the woman Embla. From this pair, all of humanity is descended. The gods gave them the realm of Midgard be their home, a land fortified against the giants by a wall made from Ymir's eyebrows. At the center of this new cosmos, the gods planted a great ash tree, Yggdrasil, the tree of life. Its branches reached up into the heavens, and its roots delved deep into the realms below. One root reached to Asgard, the home of the gods. Another stretched to Jotunheim, the land of the giants. And the third went down to Nibelheim, the realm of the dead. At the foot of Yggdrasil sat the Norns, 3 wise women who spun the threads of fate for all beings. Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods, was a place of great beauty and splendor. It was here that Odin, as the All-Father, established his throne, Hliskjulf, from which he could see all that happened in the 9 worlds. He was a god of wisdom, war, and magic, constantly seeking knowledge. He sacrificed one of his eyes at the well of Mimir in exchange for a drink that granted him immense wisdom. He also hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, to learn the secrets of the runes, the ancient symbols of power. Odin was married to Frigg, the goddess of marriage and motherhood. Together they had a son, Balder, the most beloved of all the gods, known for his beauty and gentleness. But Odin had other sons as well. There was Thor, the god of thunder, with his mighty hammer Mjolnir, the strongest of the gods and the great protector of Midgard. And there was a cunning and mischievous Loki, a giant by birth but a blood-brother to Odin, whose cleverness often helped the gods, but whose treachery would ultimately lead to their downfall. The gods built great halls in Asgard. Odin's hall was Valhalla, the hall of the slain, where warriors who died bravely in battle were brought by the Valkyries to feast and fight until the final battle of Ragnarok. Thor had his hall, Bilskirnir, the largest of all. And so the gods settled into their new home, ruling over the cosmos they had created. But their world was not one of peace. They were in constant conflict with the giants of Jotunheim, and they lived under the shadow of a prophecy that foretold a time of great upheaval, a final battle that would bring about the twilight of the gods and the destruction of the world. This was the fate that the Norns had woven, a fate that even Odin, with all his wisdom, could not escape. At the very heart of the cosmos, held aloft by the mighty boughs of Yggdrasil, lies Asgard, the celestial fortress of the Aesir gods. It is a realm of breathtaking splendor, of golden roof halls and fields where the dew sparkles like diamonds. A great wall, built by a master craftsman giant with the unwilling aid of Loki's cunning, encircles this divine kingdom, protecting it from the chaotic forces that lurk beyond. To enter Asgard, one must cross the Bifrost, a shimmering, rainbow bridge guarded vigilantly by the ever-watchful Heimdall. Heimdall, the white god, is a figure of immense importance. It is said his hearing is so keen he can hear grass growing on the earth and wool growing on sheep. He requires less sleep than a bird and can see for 100 leagues, day or night. At his side rests the Gjallarhorn, a horn whose clarion call will be heard throughout all the 9 worlds, to be sounded only at the onset of Ragnarok to summon the gods to their final battle. Ruling over this magnificent realm is Odin, the All-Father. We have met him, the god of wisdom, war, poetry, and magic, a relentless seeker of knowledge. His great hall, Valistjaf, is roofed with pure silver, and it is here his high throne, Hliskjulf, is situated. From this vantage point, no secret in the 9 worlds is hidden from his one-eyed gaze. But he also presides over Valhalla, the hall of the slain. This immense hall has 540 doors, and through each, 800 warriors can march abreast. Here, the Einarjar, the spirits of the bravest mortal warriors chosen by the Valkyries, feast every night on the meat of the boar Saramnir, which magically regenerates each day, and drink the mead that flows from the udders of the goat Aaron. Every day they battle and die, only to be resurrected each evening, honing their skills for the final, cataclysmic battle. Odin's wife is the powerful and prescient Frigg. She is the goddess of love, marriage, and destiny, a weaver of the future she often knows but seldom reveals. From her own hall, Fensalar, the Hall of Mists, she manages the affairs of the household of the gods and shares in Odin's sovereign power. While she is often depicted as a serene and queenly figure, her wisdom runs as deep as the All-Father's, and the grief she will feel for her son Bald will be a sorrow that shakes the foundations of the cosmos. The most famous of Odin's sons is, of course, Thor the Thunderer. He is a champion of both gods and mortals, a force of nature with his fiery red beard and immense strength. His hammer, Mjolnir, crafted by the master dwarfsmiths, is a weapon of terrifying power, capable of leveling mountains and returning to his hand whenever thrown. He rides across the sky in a chariot pulled by 2 goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjoster, and the rumbling of their wheels is what mortals hear as thunder. His wife is the golden-haired Sif, and his great hall, Bilskirnir in the region of Thrudvang, is the largest in Asgard, a testament to his strength and importance. He is the bulwark against the giants, the tireless defender of order against chaos. While the Aesir are the primary tribe of gods in Asgard, they were not always the only one. In a time before memory, they fought a great war with another tribe of gods, the Vanir, deities of fertility, wealth, and nature who hail from the world of Vanaheim. After a long and destructive war, the two tribes made peace and exchanged hostages to ensure it. The Vanir sent their most distinguished members to live in Asgard. Enjarar, the god of the sea, wind, and wealth, and his two children, the twins Freyr and Freya. Freyr is a god of sunshine, fertility, and prosperity. He rides a golden bristled boar named Gullinbursti and possesses the magical ship Sklanir, which is large enough to hold all the gods but can be folded up and put in his pocket. He rules over the beautiful realm of Alfheim, the world of the light elves, who are beings of radiant beauty and magical skill. His twin sister, Freya, is one of the most revered goddesses in the pantheon. She is the goddess of love, beauty, fertility, and a form of magic known as seer. She weeps tears of red gold and rides in a chariot pulled by two great cats. Like Odin, she also has a claim on the souls of fallen warriors. Half of the slain in battle go to her hall, Sessrumnir, in the field of Folkvanger. She possesses a famed necklace, the Brisingamen, a masterpiece of dwarven craft that is an object of great desire and the cause of much conflict. These gods, Aesir and Vanir, are but the most prominent figures in Asgard. There is also Tyr, the one-handed god of law and heroic glory, who sacrificed his hand to the monstrous wolf Fenrir to bind him. There is Bragi, the god of poetry and eloquence, whose words can captivate any audience, and his wife, Idun, the keeper of the golden apples that grant the gods their immortality and eternal youth. Without her apples, the gods would age and wither like mortals. But Asgard is but one of the 9 worlds, all held within the cosmological structure of Yggdrasil. The rainbow bridge Bifrost connects Asgard to Midgard, the realm of mortals. This is our world, the Middle-earth, a realm of beauty and peril, surrounded by a vast ocean. It is protected from the outer worlds by a great fence made from the eyebrows of the slain giant Ymir. Beyond this fence, in the grim and rocky land of Jotunheim, dwell the Jotnar, the giants. They are the ancient enemies of the gods, beings of chaos, frost, and untamed nature. Though not all are evil, their very existence represents a threat to the divine order of Asgard. Beneath Midgard lies the dark realm of Svartalfheim, the home of the dwarfs, also known as dark elves. They are master craftsmen, miners, and smiths who dwell in caves and underground halls, forging the greatest treasures the cosmos has ever known, from Thor's hammer to Odin's spear. Vanaheim is the homeland of the Vanir gods, a world of nature, fertility, and magic, though its specific location and nature remain somewhat mysterious in the surviving texts. Likewise, Alfheim is the radiant home of the Light Elves, ruled by Freyr, a world of art, music, and ethereal beauty. To the south burns the primordial world of fire, Muspelheim. It is a land of eternal flame and molten rock, guarded by the fire giant Surt, who waits with his flaming sword for the day of Ragnarok, when he will lead his fiery host to burn the world. To the north lies the opposite extreme, Nibelheim, the world of ice, mist, and endless cold. It is a place of primordial darkness and the source of the 11 icy rivers of the Livigar. And finally, deep beneath the ground at the roots of Yggdrasil lies the grim realm of the dead, known as Hel or Helheim. It is ruled by the goddess of the same name, Loki's daughter, whose body is half that of a beautiful woman and half a decaying corpse. This is a final destination for those who do not die a heroic death in battle, those who die of old age, sickness, or in disgrace. It is a cold, dark, and silent place from which no one, not even a god, can easily escape. These 9 worlds, from the highest bowels of Yggdrasil to its deepest roots, form a stage upon which the great drama of Norse mythology unfolds. A universe of divine splendor, mortal fragility, and monstrous chaos, all bound together by the unyielding threads of fate. In the gleaming halls of Asgard, amidst the noble and the brave, there walks a figure of shadow and fire, a being who is both the catalyst for the gods' greatest triumphs and the architect of their ultimate doom. He is Loki, the Sky Walker, the shape changer, the source of all deceit. He is handsome, charming, and silver-tongued, his mind sharper than any blade, yet his heart is a tangled knot of envy and malice. He is now the Aesir by birth. His father was a giant Farbauti and his mother Laufey. Yet, in the early days, Odin, in his wisdom or his folly, made a pact of blood brotherhood with Loki, and so he was welcomed in Asgard, a fox in the divine henhouse. Loki's nature is one of pure contradiction. He is the very essence of chaos, yet the order of Asgard could not exist without him. His schemes often place the gods in mortal peril, yet it is his cunning that frequently extracts them. It was Loki who, through a reckless promise, endangered the goddess Freya, but it was also Loki who, by transforming into a mare, distracted the giant builder stallion, Svalfari, thus preventing the giant from winning his prize and ensuring Asgard's walls were built. This act, however, had its own strange consequence, for Loki himself gave birth to the eight-legged steed Sleipnir, who would become Odin's own mount. This is a way of Loki, a solution born from a problem of his own making, a chaotic act that births a wonder. He is the great instigator. When he mischievously sheared the beautiful golden hair of Sif, Thor's wife, it was his cleverness that led him to the dwarfs of Svartalfheim. To appease the enraged Thor, he tricked the dwarfs into not only crafting a new head of magical golden hair for Sif, but also into forging some of the gods' greatest treasures, Odin's spear Gungnir, Freyr's ship Splenir, and of course, Thor's mighty hammer Mjolnir. The gods gained their most powerful artifacts, but the adventure began with an act of petty cruelty, a perfect illustration of Loki's double-edged influence. But while he walked among the gods in Asgard, his heart remained in the wild, chaotic realm of Jotunheim. There in the Ironwood, a place of grim trees and ancient evils, he took a consort who was his fitting match, the giantess Angerboa, the bringer of grief. While the gods celebrated in their golden halls, Loki and Angerboa brought forth a progeny so foul, so monstrous, that a prophecy arose foretelling their role in the utter destruction of the cosmos. When Odin, through his far-seeing wisdom, learned of this dark lineage, he knew he could not ignore the threat. He and the other gods journeyed to Jotunheim and brought the three monstrous children back to Asgard, intending to contain the doom they represented. But fate, once woven by the Norns, cannot be unraveled. The gods' attempt to control these children would only serve to place them in the very positions from which they would launch their final assault. The first of these children was a serpent Jormungandr. Even as a young creature, its venomous nature and immense size filled the gods with dread. Odin, deciding it was too dangerous to be kept in Asgard, took the serpent and hurled it into the great ocean that encircles Midgard. But the creature did not die. In the dark, sunless depths, it grew and grew, feeding on the darkness and the wrecks of ships, until it became so unimaginably vast that its body could encircle the entire world. There it remains, the Midgard serpent, biting its own tail in an eternal circle, its very presence poisoning the seas, waiting for the day of Ragnarok when it will rise from the waves to face its nemesis, Thor. The second child was a daughter, whom they named Hel. Her appearance was the most terrifying of all. From the waist up, she was a picture of a fair, if somber, noble woman. But from the waist down, her flesh was that of a rotting corpse, mottled and decaying. She was the embodiment of death and decay. Odin cast her down into the deepest and darkest of the worlds, Nibelheim, the realm of ice and mist. There, he gave her dominion over all who die of sickness, old age, or any cause other than heroic death in battle. She became the queen of the dishonorable dead, her realm a place of misery and despair known as Helheim. Her great hall is called Uljner, misery. Her plate is hunger. Her knife is famine. She rules in silence and gloom, gathering an army of the dead, an army she will unleash upon the worlds when the final day arrives. The third child, however, was the one the gods feared the most, a wolf named Fenrir. From the moment he was born, he was possessed of a ferocious strength and a terrifying hunger. He grew at an alarming rate, and soon the playful wolf cub had become a beast of such size and savagery that only one god was brave enough to feed him, Tyr, the god of law and honor. The prophecy said that Fenrir would be the one to devour Odin himself during Ragnarok, and seeing his power grow daily, the gods knew they had to act. They decided to bind the wolf. They came to Fenrir with a mighty chain called Ling, presenting it as a game, a test of his strength. Fenrir, proud and confident, allowed them to bind him, and with a single stretch, he shattered the chain to pieces. The gods, dismayed, forged a second chain, twice as strong, named Dromi. Again they challenged the wolf, and again Fenrir allowed them to bind him. He struggled more this time, but with a great heave that shook the very ground of Asgard, he broke this chain as well, earning him fame for his incredible power. Now, desperate, Odin sent a messenger to the Dark Elves in Svartalfheim, commissioning them to create a bond that could not be broken. The dwarfs, with their secret magic, forged Gleipnir. It looked like nothing more than a silken ribbon, but it was made from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. The gods brought Gleipnir to Fenrir, again presenting it as a game. But the wolf was no fool. He saw the thin, soft ribbon and grew suspicious. "This slender band seems to me to bring no glory," he snarled, "or else there's some trickery or guile afoot." He refused to be bound unless one of the gods would place their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith, a guarantee that they would free him if he could not break the chain. The gods looked at one another in fear and silence. None would volunteer. At last, Tyr, brave and honorable, stepped forward and placed his right hand between the wolf's powerful jaws. The other gods then bound Fenrir with Gleipnir. The wolf strained and struggled, pulling and thrashing with all his might, but the more he fought, the tighter the magical ribbon became. He could not break free. When the gods saw he was truly bound, they all laughed, all except Tyr, who lost his hand. In his rage, Fenrir tried to bite them, but they thrust the sword into his mouth, its hilt against his lower jaw and its point against his upper palate, propping it open. A river of foam, called Hope, flows for his gaping maw. There he lies, bound to a great rock on a desolate island, howling in fury, waiting for the coming of Ragnarok, when all chains will break. Thus, the gods, in their attempt to subvert destiny, became its agents. They placed the serpent in the sea that borders the world, the queen of the dead upon her dark throne, and the great wolf in chains, each one a ticking clock, counting down to the twilight of their age. Deep within the earth, in a world of eternal twilight and veins of precious ore, lies the realm of Svartalfheim. This is the home of the dwarfs, a race of beings as ancient and mysterious as the stone from which they were born. The sagas tell that when the gods slew the primeval giant Ymir, maggots writhed in his decaying flesh. The gods, in their wisdom, gave these creatures intelligence and a human-like form, creating the first dwarfs. They are beings of the dark, for the sun's rays are lethal to them, capable of turning them to stone in an instant. And so they dwell in their cavernous halls, their minds as sharp as the picks they wield, their hearts often filled with a greed for the gold and jewels they unearth. They are not noble nor they fair, but their skill is utterly without equal. They are the master craftsmen of the 9 worlds. The greatest of their creations, the very artifacts that define the power of the Aesir, were not born from a divine commission, but from an act of malice, born of the ceaseless mischief of Loki. As we have heard, the trickster, in a fit of cruel humor, stole into the chambers of Thor's wife, Sif, and sheared off her magnificent hair, a cascade of gold that was the envy of all. When Thor, in his boundless rage, threatened to break every bone in Loki's body, the terrified trickster swore he would venture to Svartalfheim and procure a new head of hair for Sif, one even more beautiful than the one he had stolen. And so, Loki descended into the deep places of the earth, to the forges of the sons of Ivaldi, renowned craftsmen even among their own kind, with his silver tongue. He persuaded them not only to craft a new head of hair for Sif, spun from the finest gold that would grow upon her head, as if it were natural, but also to create 2 other masterpieces. For the Allfather Odin, they forged a spear Gungnir, a weapon so perfectly balanced it would never miss its mark. And for the Vanir god Freyr, they built the ship Sklanir, a vessel of wondrous magic, large enough to carry all the gods of Asgard, yet so cleverly made it could be folded down to fit inside one's pocket. With these 3 treasures in hand, Loki's task was complete. But Loki's arrogance is a bottomless well. Before leaving Svartalfheim, he sought out 2 other dwarf brothers, Brokkr and Eitri. Boasting of the Ivaldi sons' creations, Loki declared that no other smiths could match their skill. He was so certain that he wagered his own head on it, betting that Brokkr and his brother Eitri could not forge 3 treasures that would surpass the first 3. Brokkr, his professional pride stung, accepted the wager immediately. The 2 brothers went to their forge. Eitri, the master smith, placed a pig skin into the heart of the fire, and instructed Brocker to work the bellows, warning him that he must not stop, not even for an instant, lest the work be ruined. As Brocker began to pump, Loki, ever the cheater, transformed himself into a large horsefly. He landed on Brocker's hand and bit him hard. Yet Brocker did not falter. He pumped the bellows steadily until Eitri returned and pulled from the forge a living boar with bristles of gleaming gold. This was Gullinbursti, who could run faster than any horse through air and water, and whose bristles glowed brightly enough to illuminate the darkest night. Next, Eitri placed a great amount of gold into the forge and gave Brocker the same instruction. The fly returned, landing this time on Brocker's thick neck, and bit down twice as hard as before. Still, Brocker did not stop. His rhythm was unbroken. When Eitri returned, he drew from the fire a golden ring of exquisite beauty. This was Draupnir, the ring of power. Every ninth night, 8 identical gold rings would drop from it, a source of endless wealth. Finally, Eitri placed a block of raw iron into the forge. "Now," he said, "the work will be ruined if you fail. Everything depends on this." As Brocker worked the bellows, the fly made its final, desperate attack. It landed on Brocker's eyelid and bit so viciously that blood streamed into his eye, blinding him. For a single, fleeting moment, Brocker let go of the bellows to wipe the blood away. It was just an instant, but it was enough. Eitri returned and pulled from the flames a massive iron hammer. It was a weapon of immense power and perfect balance, save for one flaw. Because of that momentary interruption, its handle was slightly too short. This was Mjolnir. With their 3 treasures complete, Brock, accompanied by Loki, ascended to Asgard to have a wager judged. The gods assembled in their great hall of judgment, with Odin, Thor, and Freyr presiding. Loki presented his gifts first. He gave the golden hair to Sif, the spear Gungnir to Odin, and the ship Splenir to Freyr, explaining the magical properties of each. Then Brocker stepped forward. He gave the ring Draupnir to Odin. He presented the boar Gullinbursti to Freyr. Finally, he came to Thor. "To you," the dwarf said, "I give this hammer. It is called Mjolnir. With it, you may strike as hard as you desire at whatever's before you, and the hammer will never fail. If you throw it, it will never miss and will always return to your hand. Its only flaw is that its handle is a bit short." The gods deliberated. While all the treasures were wondrous, they declared that the hammer Mjolnir was the greatest of all, for it would be their chief defense against the frost giants of Jotunheim. The wager was won. Brocker had triumphed. The dwarf turned to Loki to claim his prize. "I have won," he declared, "and now I will have your head." But Loki, as always, had a trick ready. "You have won my head, that is true," he said with a smirk, "but you did not win my neck. You may have the head, but you must not touch the neck in the slightest." Enraged at being cheated of his prize by this verbal trickery, Brocker decided to at least have some satisfaction. If he could not sever Loki's head, he would silence his lying lips. With the help of Thor, he seized the trickster, and using a small tool called an awl, he pierced Loki's lips and sewed them shut with a leather thong. The silence, of course, did not last long. Loki eventually tore the thong free, leaving his lips scarred, but his wit as sharp and dangerous as ever. And so, the gods received their most iconic treasures, tools of order and protection, born not of divine will, but of malice, arrogance, and a trickster's wager, forged in the dark and secret fires of the earth. While Odin plots and Loki schemes, the primary defense of the 9 worlds rests on shoulders broad enough to bear the weight. It rests upon the might of Thor, the Thunderer, son of Odin, and the earth itself. He is not a god of subtlety or cunning. His wisdom is the simple, direct truth of the storm, his diplomacy the crushing blow of his hammer. He is a champion of Asgard, but more than that, he is a protector of Midgard, the god of the common man, the shield against the endless hunger of the giants. He rides his goat-drawn chariot across the skies, his red beard bristling like fire, his eyes blazing with righteous fury. He wields 3 great treasures: his hammer Mjolnir, which none but he can lift, his belt of strength Megingir, which doubles his already immense power, and his iron gauntlets, Jarngrape, needed to handle the mighty hammer's raw force. His tales are not of riddles and whispers, but grand adventures and earth-shaking battles. One of the most famous of these tales begins not with a war, but with a journey. Thor, accompanied by the ever-present Loki, set out for Jotunheim. They traveled until nightfall and took shelter at the farm of a mortal family. For dinner, Thor slaughtered his 2 goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjostr, and shared the meat, giving a stern warning. All would eat their fill, but none would break the bones. The bones were to be placed carefully upon the goatskins. But the farmer's son, a boy named Jalfi, was swayed by Loki's whispers. Eager to taste the rich marrow, he took a thigh bone and split it with his knife. The next morning, Thor took his hammer, blessed the goatskins, and his goat sprang back to life, whole and healthy, save for one, which now had a limp. Thor's rage was a terrifying thing to behold. The sky darkened, and lightning crackled in his hands. The terrified family begged for their lives, offering all they owned. Seeing their fear, Thor's anger subsided, and in settlement he took the boy Thjalfi and his sister Roskva to be his servants. The 4 companions, Thor, Loki, Thjalfi, and Roskva, continued their journey deep into the land of giants. They walked until they entered a vast, dark forest, and as night fell, they found a strange and enormous hall to sleep in. They were awoken in the night by a great earthquake and thunderous rumbling. The next morning, they discovered the source. A giant of truly colossal size lay sleeping nearby, and the rumbling was his snores. The hall they had slept in was merely his glove. The giant awoke, introducing himself as Skrymir. He offered to travel with them and combined their meager provisions into his own large bag. But when they stopped to eat, none of them, not even Thor, could untie the knot on Skrymir's bag. Frustrated and hungry, Thor waited until the giant slept and struck him on the head with Mjolnir. Skrymir merely stirred, asking if a leaf had fallen on him. Thor waited and struck again with all his might. The giant awoke, asking if an acorn had perhaps dropped on his head. Finally, gathering all his divine strength, Thor delivered a 3rd blow, burying the hammer in the giant's forehead. Skrymir simply sat up, rubbed his cheek, and said it felt as though a bird had dropped a twig on him before departing. Baffled and humiliated, the 4 companions arrived at a massive fortress, the castle of the giant king, Tgar Loki. The king greeted them with mocking hospitality, declaring that no one was permitted to stay unless they could perform some great feat. Loki, ever boastful, claimed he could eat faster than anyone. Tgar Loki called for a long wooden trough filled with meat and pitted Loki against a lean giant named Logi. They ate from opposite ends, meeting in the middle. Loki had consumed all the meat on his side, but Logi had devoured the meat, the bones, and the trough itself. Loki was defeated. Next, young Thjalfi, known for his speed, was challenged to a race against a contender named Hugi. Thjalfi ran like the wind, but Hugi was so fast that he reached the finish line and turned back to greet Thjalfi before he was even halfway there. They raced twice more, and each time, Thjalfi's defeat was more decisive. Finally, it was Thor's turn. The giants jeered. Thor, famous for his drinking, chose a drinking contest. Tgar Loki presented him a long, curved drinking horn, saying a good drinker could empty it in one go. Thor put the horn to his lips and drank a draught so deep he thought he would burst, but when he looked, the level had barely dropped. He tried a second, and then a 3rd time with all his might, and still the horn was nearly full. He had failed. Mocked for his failure, Thor was offered a seemingly childish challenge: to lift the king's large gray cat from a floor. Thor put his arm under the cat's belly and lifted with all his might. The cat simply arched its back. Straining until the belt of strength tightened around him, Thor managed to lift one of the cat's paws from the floor, but no more. He had failed again. Now furious and utterly humiliated, Thor demanded a real challenge: to wrestle. Tgar Loki replied that it would be beneath his warriors to wrestle Thor after such a poor showing, so he called for his old nurse, an ancient woman named Ellie. Thor grappled with the old woman. He expected an easy victory, but she was impossibly strong. The more he strained, the more he faltered. The struggle was immense, and in the end, Thor, the mighty god of thunder, was forced down to one knee. The contests were over. The next morning, Tgar Loki led them out of the fortress. Once they were safely outside, the giant king revealed the truth. He was Skrymir, and he had used magic to deceive them. The knot on the bag was bound with spells. The blows Thor had struck him with a hammer had missed, instead carving 3 vast valleys into a mountain range. The contests, too, were illusions. Loki's opponent, Logi, was wildfire itself, which consumes all. Jalfi's opponent, Hugi, was thought, which is faster than any runner. Thor's challenges were against the forces of nature itself. The drinking horn was connected to the ocean, and Thor's mighty draughts had been so great they had created the tides. The cat he could barely lift was in fact Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, and by lifting its paw, Thor had stretched the serpent so high it had nearly touched the sky. And the old woman, Ellie, was old age itself, which no one, god or mortal, can ever defeat. Tgara Loki confessed his terror, for he had seen that Thor's power was so great it could challenge the very foundations of the cosmos. As Thor raised his hammer in a rage to strike the deceiver, the king and his fortress vanished into thin air, leaving only an empty field. Though tricked, Thor's reputation was not diminished. His strength was proven to be cosmic in scale. Still, the encounter with the disguised serpent left him wanting a true confrontation. He journeyed to the hall of the giant Hymir and, disguised as a young boy, asked to go fishing. Hymir mocked him, but agreed. For bait, Thor ripped the head from one of Hymir's finest oxen. They rowed out, and Thor forced the giant to keep rowing far beyond the usual fishing grounds, out into the deep ocean where the world serpent lay. Using the ox head as bait on a massive line, Thor cast it into the depths. The Midgard serpent seized it. The struggle was so violent that the world itself shook. Thor's feet burst the hull of the boat, and planting them on the ocean floor, he pulled with all the strength of a god. While Thor's the fist of the Aesir, Odin is its mind. While the Thunderer guards the present with his strength, the All-Father seeks to secure the future with his wisdom. Odin is a god of kings and poets, of war and of magic. But above all else, he is a god defined by his relentless, agonizing quest for knowledge. He carries the weight of all the 9 worlds on his shoulders, for he alone has the foresight to see the great tapestry of fate woven by the Norns, and he knows that its final threads depict a sky black with smoke and a world drowned in the sea. Every action he takes, every sacrifice he makes, is a desperate move in a cosmic chess match against a destiny that he knows to be inescapable. This is the burden of the All-Father, to know the end is coming and to spend all of eternity trying to delay it. His quest for knowledge has carved its story onto his very body. The most visible mark of his sacrifice is his missing eye. In the realm of the giants, under one of the great roots of Yggdrasil, lies a spring of pure, shimmering water, the well of Mimir. To drink from this well is to gain unparalleled wisdom and understanding of the cosmos. The well is guarded by the ancient and wise being Mimir, who knows the value of the knowledge contained within his waters. Many had come seeking a drink, but none were willing to pay the price. Odin, cloaked and determined, journeyed to the well. He asked Mimir for a single draught. Mimir looked upon the Lord of Asgard and knew the depth of his desire. He would grant the request, but the well demanded a pledge of equal worth. What could a god offer that was equal to cosmic wisdom? Odin did not hesitate. In a solemn, grim act of will, the All-Father gouged out his own left eye and dropped it into the depths of the spring. The eye settled on the bottom, a permanent, staring pledge of his commitment. Mimir, satisfied, filled the great horn Gjallarhorn with the well water and offered it to the one-eyed god. Odin drank, and the universe opened itself to him. He saw the secret histories of all things, the hidden connections between the worlds, and the shadowed path that led to the final day of Ragnarok. He left the well with one less eye, but his inner sight was now infinite. Yet even this was not enough. There was a power deeper than wisdom, a magic woven into the very fabric of creation, the runes. These were not mere letters for writing, but symbols of fundamental cosmic forces. To know the runes was to have power over the forces they represented. But their secrets were not given freely. They had to be seized through an ordeal of profound suffering. Odin, in his pursuit of this ultimate power, undertook the most harrowing trial of all. He would make an offering of himself to himself. He journeyed to the trunk of Yggdrasil, the world tree that connects all realms. With his own spear, Gungnir, he wounded his side. He then hanged himself from a great wind-swept branch, twisting slowly in the void between the worlds. For 9 days and 9 agonizing nights he hung there, without bread to eat or water to drink. He was battered by the winds, his body racked with pain, and his mind teetering on the precipice of death and madness. It was a shamanic ritual of the highest order, a symbolic death to achieve a spiritual rebirth. On the 9th night, as his life force faded to a mere flicker, he peered down into the darkness, into the well of Ur where the Norn spin their threads of fate. In a blinding flash of insight born of his suffering, the patterns were revealed to him. He saw the runes. With a final, agonized scream, he took them up, comprehending their power and their secrets. At that moment, his ordeal was complete, and he fell from the tree, reborn not just as a king or a warrior, but as the master of the deepest magic, the Lord of the Runes. Armed with this knowledge, Odin often walks the worlds in disguise. He is the great wanderer, traveling through Midgard as an old, gray-bearded man with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low to hide his missing eye. He calls himself Grimnir, or Vegtam the Wanderer, testing the hospitality and wisdom of kings and commoners alike, gathering news and sowing the seeds of his intricate plans. He is never truly alone, for his 2 ravens, Hugin, which is thought, and Munnin, which is memory, fly out from his shoulders at dawn each day. They soar across the 9 worlds, seeing all and hearing all, and return at dusk to whisper their findings into the All-Father's ear. At his feet lie his 2 wolves, Jerry and Freki, to whom he gives all of his food, for he himself subsists on nothing but wine. His cunning is as much a tool as his magic. He is the god of poets, a gift he won through trickery and seduction. The precious mead of poetry, which grants the drinker the gift of eloquent verse, was held deep inside a mountain by the giant Sutinger and guarded by his daughter, Gunnel. Odin, through a series of elaborate deceptions, transformed himself into a snake and slithered through a tiny hole into the maiden's chamber. He spent 3 nights with her, and in return, she allowed him 3 sips of the mead. In 3 mighty gulps, he drained all 3 vats. Transforming into a great eagle, he flew desperately back towards Asgard, with the enraged Sutinger in hot pursuit, also in the form of an eagle. He made it back just in time, spitting the precious mead into vats the gods had prepared. In his haste, a few drops fell to Midgard, becoming the share of all the bad and mediocre poets. The rest he saved for the gods and the truly gifted bards among mankind. Odin is a god of endless facets and contradictions. He is the god of the frenzy of battle and the quiet contemplation of the poet. He is the king of the gods who chooses to wander as a beggar. He is a divine being who willingly submits himself to torture and mutilation. All his wisdom, all his magic, all his suffering is focused on a single, terrible point in time, the coming of Ragnarok. He is the All-Father, and his burden is to know that even with all his power and all his knowledge, fate is a current against which even a god cannot swim forever. In the golden age of Asgard, there was a light that shone brighter than any star. This was Balder the Beautiful, son of Odin and Frigg, the most beloved being in all the 9 worlds. He was a god of light, joy, peace, and purity. Where he walked, flowers bloomed and sorrow fled. His hall, Breidablik, was a place where no falsehood could be uttered and no unclean thing could enter. He was the sun to Asgard summer, the embodiment of the gods' goodness and hope, a living promise that their world of order would endure. But a shadow began to creep into that perfect light. Balder became plagued by terrible dreams, nightmares that whispered a dark and final end for him. A deep gloom fell over Asgard, for if harm to come to Balder, then no one was truly safe. The gods met in council, their feasting halls silent, their hearts heavy with dread. Odin, fearing the worst, saddled his 8-legged steed Sleipnir and rode down the long road to Helheim to consult a long-dead prophetess, who confirmed his fears. A grim fate would prepare for Balder, and his death would be the herald of the end. Frigg, his mother, refused to accept this fate. In a desperate act of maternal love, she embarked on a great journey, traversing all 9 worlds. She stood before fire and water, iron and all metals, stones of the earth and trees of the forest. She spoke to sicknesses and poisons, to every beast that walks and every bird that flies, and from each and every one she extracted a solemn oath that they would do no harm to her son, Balder. confident in her work. She returned to Asgard, believing she had woven an unbreakable shield of love around her child. The gods' joy returned, and a new sport became popular in their halls. They would gather in a field and test Baldur's new invulnerability. They hurled stones at him, threw axes, shot arrows, and thrust their spears. Nothing could touch him. Every weapon, every projectile, would swerve aside or bounce off harmlessly. The gods would laugh and cheer, celebrating the triumph over fate. It was a time of great relief and merriment for all except one. Loki, the architect of discord, watched these games not with joy, but with a heart curdled by envy. He could not stand to see Baldur so beloved, so perfect. His malicious mind began to spin a web. He shape-shifted, taking the form of a frail old woman, and hobbled to Fensaler Frigg's misty hall. He praised her for her cleverness in securing the oaths. "Is it true," the old woman asked with feigned innocence, "that everything has sworn not to harm your son?" Frigg, filled with pride, let her guard down. "Everything," she confirmed, "except for one little thing. A shrub that grows west of Valhalla. It is the mistletoe. It seemed too young and harmless to demand an oath from." It was all Loki needed to hear. He left Frigg's hall at once, his mind alight with a terrible purpose. He found the mistletoe, a parasitic plant growing on the side of a great oak, and from its wood he whittled a slender, sharpened dart, hardening it with his dark magic. He then returned to the field where the gods were still at their game. He saw one god standing apart from the others, his head bowed. It was Hr, Baldur's own twin brother, who was blind. "Why do you not join the others in honoring your brother?" Loki asked, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Because I am blind," Hr replied sadly, "and I have no weapon to throw." Loki's trap was set. "Do as the others do," he whispered, pressing the mistletoe dart into Hr's hand. "I will guide your arm, so you too can show Baldur this honor." Hr, trusting and innocent, agreed. With Loki guiding his aim, he threw the small dart. It flew straight and true. It did not swerve. It did not bounce. The mistletoe, the one thing that had not sworn an oath, pierced Baldur the Beautiful, and he fell to the ground dead. A silence fell upon the field, a silence so profound it was as if the universe itself had gasped. The gods were struck dumb with grief and horror, so deep they could not speak. The laughter died on their lips, their hands fell to their sides, and they looked at one another with eyes full of the sorrow they had never known. The light of Asgard had been extinguished. Their grief soon turned to a quiet, burning rage. They all knew, without a word being spoken, who was truly to blame. They saw Loki standing there, the smirk of triumph finally fading from his face as he realized the enormity of what he had done. But the field was a holy place, and they could not take their vengeance there. The funeral of Baldur was the grandest and most sorrowful event the gods had ever known. They carried his body to the sea and laid him upon his great ship, Ringhorni. But as he lay there, his wife, the goddess Nanna, looked upon her dead husband, and her heart broke from grief. She collapsed and died, and they laid her on the funeral pyre beside him. The pyre was lit, and Thor stepped forward to sanctify the flames with Mjolnir. But even as the ship burned, Frigg could not abandon hope. She begged for a volunteer to ride the perilous road to Helheim, and offer ransom to Hel for Baldur's return. Hermod the Bold, another of Odin's sons, bravely accepted the task. For 9 nights, he rode Odin's steed Sleipnir through valleys so deep and dark the sun never touched them, until he came to the roaring river Joel and crossed its golden bridge. At last, he stood before the massive gates of Helheim. He spurred Sleipnir, who leaped clean over them. Inside, he found Baldur seated in the place of honor. Hermod pleaded with Queen Hel, begging her to release his brother, telling her the great sorrow that had fallen upon all the worlds. Hel listened, and then made her decree. "If Baldur is so beloved as you say," she stated, "then let us find out. If every single thing in the 9 worlds, alive and dead, weeps for him, then he may return to Asgard. But if even one refuses, he shall remain with me." The gods sent messengers to every corner of the cosmos, and the great weeping began. Mortals wept, the Aesir wept, the giants wept, The very earth itself wept, and tears ran from the stones and the trees. The world was awash in grief. It seemed that Balder would be saved. But as the messengers were returning, their task almost complete, they found an old giantess sitting in a dark cave. Her name was KK. They asked her to weep for Balder. She just cackled. KK will weep dry tears for Balder's burial, she sneered. Let hell hold what she has. The giantess was, of course, Loki in disguise. With that single act of defiance, the condition was broken. The gates of hell remained sealed to Balder forever. The age of joy was over. The death of Balder was a wound that would never heal, and it triggered the unraveling of the world. A terrible, calamitous winter descended upon the realms. The Fimbul winter, the mighty winter. For 3 years, snow fell from all directions, the sun grew dim, and a biting wind howled endlessly. There was no summer. All bonds of kinship and law dissolved among mortals. In the desperate struggle for survival, brother killed brother. Fathers did not spare sons, and the world sank into a brutal age of axe and sword, an age of wind and wolves. It was a great twilight frost, the final, chilling breath before the fire of Ragnarok. The Fimbul winter ends. A strange silence falls upon the frozen world. Then a final, terrible omen appears in the sky. The great wolf skull, who has pursued the sun for ages, at last catches his prize. He swallows the sun, and the world is plunged into an absolute, chilling darkness. His brother, Hati, devours the moon, leaving only the cold, distant stars. At that moment, the entire cosmos begins to tremble. The roots of Yggdrasil shudder, and tremendous earthquakes rock the 9 worlds. Mountains collapse, and every chain, every bond, every fetter is shattered. In a subterranean prison, the bound trickster, Loki, feels his chains fall away. He is free, his heart filled not with relief, but with an ancient, burning hatred. In the darkness, the monstrous wolf Fenrir, his rage nurtured for centuries, snaps the silken ribbon Gleipnir as if it were thread. His jaws, held open for so long by a sword, now gape wide enough to stretch from the earth to the sky. Fire burns from his eyes and nostrils as he begins his rampage. In the now black ocean surrounding Midgard, the world serpent Jormungand awakens in a fury. He thrashes and twists, vomiting his venom into the air and sea, and causing colossal tidal waves to crash over the shores of the world, flooding the land. The forces of chaos begin to muster. From the north, the ship Naglfar, built gruesomely from the unclipped fingernails and toenails of the dead, breaks free from its moorings on the rising flood. With Loki at its helm, it sails forth, carrying the frost giant of Jotunheim to the final battle. From the south comes an even more terrifying sight. The sky cracks open, and the fire giant Surtur emerges, leading the sons of Muspelheim. He wields a sword that burns brighter and hotter than the sun, and as his fiery legion crosses the Bifrost Bridge to storm Asgard, the rainbow path shatters and collapses behind them. On the battlements of the celestial city, the ever-vigilant Heimdall sees the coming doom. He raises a Gyllerhorn to his lips and sounds one long, piercing blast. The call echoes through every corner of the 9 worlds, a final, desperate alarm. The gods know the day has come. In Asgard, Odin rides to the well of Mimir to consult the wise head one last time, then returns to don his golden helmet. He gathers the Aesir and leads them out of the gates, followed by the vast army of his chosen champions, the Einherjar, who pour from the 540 doors of Valhalla, their weapons gleaming in the gloom. They march to the great plain of Vigrar, the battlefield designated for the end of the world, a plain 100 leagues in every direction. There, they await their enemies. The armies clash, and the battle of all battles begins. The din is deafening, the chaos absolute. But amid the turmoil, fate draws its chosen combatants together for their final, fatal duels. Odin, the All-Father, charges directly at the head of the enemy army, straight towards a monstrous wolf Fenrir. But the prophecy woven by the Norns cannot be undone. For all his wisdom and power, for all his sacrifice and searching, Odin's destiny is to be consumed. The great wolf's jaws snap shut, and the king of the gods is swallowed whole, vanishing from a world. But vengeance is swift. Odin's silent son, Vidar, the god of retribution, strides forward to face his father's killer. He wears a special shoe, cobbled together from all the leather scraps that mortal shoemakers have discarded over the ages. He plants the shoe firmly on Fenrir's lower jaw, grabs the upper jaw with his bare hands, and with a surge of cosmic strength born of grief and rage, he rips the monster's mouth apart, avenging the All-Father. At another part of the field, Thor, champion of Midgard, finally confronts his oldest nemesis. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, rises from the sea, its colossal head towering over the battlefield. Their struggle is titanic, shaking the foundations of the dying world. Thor, in a final, glorious burst of strength, brings Mjolnir crashing down upon the serpent's skull, killing the beast at last. But as the monster collapses, it spews a torrent of black venom, drenching the god of thunder. Thor staggers back 9 paces, one for each of the 9 worlds, and then with a final, shuddering breath, he falls dead, poisoned by the very chaos he sought to destroy. The beautiful god Freyr, lord of the harvest, charges at the leader of the fire giants, the mighty Surtur. But Freyr fights at a disadvantage. Long ago, he gave away his magical, self-fighting sword to win the love of the giantess Geir. He fights bravely with a stag's antler, but it is not enough. Surtur's flaming sword flashes, and the god of summer and sunshine falls. The one-handed god of law, Tyr, finds his final opponent in Garm, the monstrous hound from the gates of hell. They tear each other to pieces, a grim end for the god who sacrificed his hand for the sake of order. And at last, the 2 great opposites, the architects of the beginning and the end of this conflict, find each other. Heimdall, the white god, guardian of Asgard, clashes with Loki, the schemer and agent of chaos. They fight with a hatred as old as the world itself, and in their final exchange, they run each other through with their weapons, falling dead together. The great champions have fallen. The field of VGRR is littered with the bodies of gods, giants, and mortals. But the end is not yet complete. Surtur, the last one standing amidst the carnage, raises his fiery sword. He hurls his fire across the earth, and the flames leap up to the heavens. The world tree, Yggdrasil, shudders to its core. The fire consumes everything, the living and the dead, the land and the sea. The earth groans, cracks, and sinks beneath the boiling waves. The stars, which have watched since the beginning, are extinguished and fall like sparks into the void. All that remains is fire, smoke, and a vast, silent darkness. The twilight of the gods is complete. The old world is gone. The fire has died. The sea, having swallowed the earth, is calm once more. There is no sound, no light, no life. The 9 worlds are gone. The great tree Yggdrasil, though it shuddered, still stands, a silent monument to the age that has passed. In the vast, silent darkness, the old cycle ends, and a new one waits to begin. Slowly, miraculously, a new world is born, and earth, green and beautiful, rises again from the waves. The fields are fertile, bearing crops without any need for sowing. The waterfalls flow once more, and in the mountains an eagle, the symbol of the old kings of gods, soars again, hunting for fish in the shimmering rapids. The sun, too, has a daughter, a new son, as fair and bright as her mother, who now takes up the celestial journey, warming the new land. The age of darkness is over. To this new, green earth, the survivors return. They are few, but they carry the memory of the past. Odin's sons, the silent avenger Vidar and the bold Valley, arrive on the plains of Iavor, the shining fields where Asgard once stood in all its glory. They are joined by the sons of Thormi, whose name means courage, and Magni, whose name means strength. Between them, they carry their father's mighty hammer, Mjolnir. It is no longer a weapon for smashing the skulls of giants, but a sacred relic, a tool of consecration and protection for this new, gentler age. Then, the greatest miracle of all occurs. From the underworld, whose gates were shattered in the final cataclysm, 2 figures emerge into the new sunlight. It is Balder the Beautiful, the god of light, returned at last from the land of the dead, and with him walks his blind brother Hr, who was the unwitting instrument of his death. In this new world, there is no blame, no bitterness between them. They are reconciled, their tragic past washed away by the destruction of the old world. The return of light and forgiveness of the gravest sin are the first acts of the new age. This small gathering of gods sits together on the green grass of Iovar. They speak of the past, of the secrets of the runes, of the great serpent, and of the wolf. They remember their fallen kin, the wisdom of Odin, the might of Thor, the beauty of Freyr, not just with sorrow, but with reverence. And as they talk, one of them looks down and sees something glinting in the new grass. They are the golden game pieces, the taffel boards that the Aesir played with in the first dawn of time. The treasures were not lost, merely buried. The game could begin anew. And what of humanity? Not all were lost. Before the final fires, two mortals had found shelter in a place called Hodmimis Holt, the wood of Hordmimir, the one place on earth that Surtur's flames could not consume. Their names were Lif, which means life, and Lofracer, the one who strives for life. They slept through the end of the world, and their only sustenance was the morning dew. Now, they emerged from the safety of the wood, blinking in the new sunlight. From this man and this woman, a new human race will spring, a race that will repopulate the green earth, living in peace and harmony. A new order takes shape. High above, a hall named Gimel is seen, a building fairer than the sun, roofed with gold. It is here that the virtuous and the righteous will dwell for all time in endless joy. And the sagas whisper of another, a new ruler, a single, mighty God who will come to govern all, whose name and nature are a great mystery. But the rebirth of the world does not mean the erasure of all darkness. On a distant shore, Nastrand, the corpse shore, a grim hall still stands, its doors facing north, its walls woven from the living spines of serpents whose heads drip venom into hall below. Here, murderers, adulterers, and oath-breakers are made to wade through the venomous rivers. And the great dragon, Nher, Malastriker, who survived the fall of the old world, flies over the fields of the dead, carrying corpses on his wings and chewing on the roots of the new age. Evil has not been destroyed, merely diminished. The potential for darkness remains, a necessary shadow to the brilliant light of the new world. The twilight of the gods is over, but their stories are not forgotten. They are the memories upon which this new world is built. The cycle of destruction and creation is complete. The rage of the storm has passed, giving way to the quiet strength of the sun. The new age begins not with a bang, but with the gentle sound of waterfalls, the rustle of new leaves, and the quiet conversation of gods who have survived the end of all things and found peace on the other side. Our journey is at an end. We have traveled from the formless void at Ginnungagap Gap to the golden halls of Asgard. We have witnessed the cunning of Loki, the might of Thor, and the terrible sacrifice of Odin. We have stood on the battlefield of VGRR as the world burned and drowned in the twilight of the gods, and we have felt the quiet hope of a new dawn on a reborn earth. The cycle is complete, but the story itself did not sink beneath the waves. It survived. It endured. It speaks to us still, a faint and powerful echo from a world of ice and fire. Why? Why do these tales, from a people whose time has long passed, still hold such a grip on our imagination? The most immediate answer is written on our calendars. When you speak of Tuesday, you speak of Tears Day, honoring the god of law who sacrificed his hand for order. When you say Wednesday, you say Woden's Day, the day of Odin, the All-Father and Wanderer. Thursday is Thor's Day, a tribute to the thunder's protector. And Friday belongs to Frigg, the queen of the gods, or perhaps to Freya, the goddess of love. These are not just historical footnotes. They are evidence of how deeply this worldview is embedded in the cultures that shaped our own language, a daily, unconscious remembrance of the Norse pantheon. But the legacy runs far deeper than the names of the week. It lies in the very spirit of the mythology itself. Unlike many mythologies that promise an ultimate victory of good over evil, the Norse gods lived with darker, more stoic understanding of the universe. They knew they were doomed. Odin, with all his wisdom, knew that Fenrir would one day devour him. Thor, for all his strength, knew that the serpent was his final end. Their heroism was not defined by the hope of victory, but by the courage to fight a battle they knew they would lose. It is a philosophy of defiance in the face of an unchangeable fate, a profound lesson that true character is revealed not when we are winning, but when we are facing certain defeat. This worldview is populated by gods who are not perfect paragons, but flawed, complex, and deeply human. Odin is a seeker of wisdom, but also a deceiver. Thor is a noble protector, but also a hothead. The gods make mistakes. They hold grudges. They are vain, and they love with a fierce passion. This complexity makes them feel real. It reminds us that the struggle between order and chaos is not just a cosmic battle, but one that takes place within every individual heart. From this culture came the foundations of modern fantasy. When J.R.R. Tolkien, a brilliant scholar of Old Norse, sat down to write his tales of Middle-earth, he dipped his pen into the well of Mimir. His wizard Gandalf, who wanders the land as a gray-bearded old man with staff and a wide-brimmed hat, is a direct echo of Odin the Wanderer. His dwarves, with their Norse names, their greed for gold, and their master of the forge, are the children of Svartalfheim. The entire epic scope of his work, the sense of a long defeat, the courage against impossible odds, the clash of good and evil on a world-altering scale, is infused with the spirit of the Norse sagas. And because Tolkien is the father of the modern fantasy genre, the influence of Norse mythology has spread like the branches of Yggdrasil. Every time we encounter a hammer-wielding warrior, a wise and enigmatic wizard, a proud race of elves, or a surly, axe-loving dwarf in a book, a film, or a game, we are meeting the descendants of the Aesir and the other inhabitants of the Nine Worlds. In our own time, this legacy is more visible than ever. The mighty Thor has been reimagined as a comic book superhero, his story adapted for a global cinematic audience. While these versions may differ greatly from the original myths, they have brought the names of Odin, Loki, and Asgard into modern consciousness, sparking a new curiosity that often leads back to the ancient texts. Hugely popular video games allow us to sail Viking longships, explore snowy Norse landscapes, and even fight as God ourselves, immersing us in the aesthetic and drama of this ancient world in ways the original skalds could never have imagined. So why do we still listen to these tales told around the fire so many centuries ago? We listen because they speak to timeless human truths. They teach us that wisdom often requires sacrifice, that honor is worth more than life, and that our reputation, the story that is told of us after we're gone, is our true legacy. They teach us that the world is a complex and often dangerous place, but that there is profound nobility in facing that danger with courage. The Twilight of the Gods was not just an ending. It was a clearing of the board so that the game could begin again. The stories of the golden chess pieces, rediscovered in the grass of a new world. They are a reminder that all things are cyclical, that even from the most total destruction, a new, green world can be born. In remembering the saga of the Norse gods, we keep their fire alive, and we find in their ancient struggles the enduring echo of our own.